Hello, KCIW listeners, and welcome to Curry Café, where we put together a panel of volunteers and guests who discuss various topics from whimsical and fun to more serious subjects.
Well, that was Rick McNamer here in recording only. He does our introductions, and we don't know how to start it if he doesn't do the introduction, so we played the recording. My name is Ray Gary, and I'll be the host today, and we have only one guest, so there's no panel of interesting hosts. But we have one guest that is so interesting, she'll probably cover enough information for two or three of us. So if you would like to introduce yourself.
With great expectations preceding me, my name is Megan Boye. I am from here and somewhat recently returned after a period away on my odysseys, and now I'm back and rediscovering Brookings and how it's changed over the decades and all the things that have remained the same, and new faces, old faces, enjoying myself very much. Thank you for having me.
So did you return because you burnt out every place you've been and you thought this is a safe place?
I was actually fairly close to feeling like I'd done the circumnavigation, and my husband-to-be at that time, we are now married, was also from Oregon, and we were kind of feeling an urge to get back closer to our family. We were at that point in western North Carolina in the mountains. And my dad actually died. I was eating chili and watching Aliens, and I got the call that my father had passed suddenly. And so we kind of just packed up the turtle and the dog and got into our cars and went back across the country. This was November of 2021. So we moved everything over and came back here and spent a year living in my old teenage bedroom upstairs, which my dad had turned into a sound studio while I was gone for, it was only 25 years or so, but while I was gone, he turned it into a sound studio. So we had a soundproof room to live in, which I guess is handy when you're a grown-up and you're suddenly living back home in your teenage bedroom with your husband-to-be and your recently widowed mother. So we spent a year living in my old bedroom while there was this old cabin on the property when my parents bought the land up the Winchuck in 86 or something, 85 maybe. And when they bought it, there was an old redwood cabin on the property with this old guy living in it, Jim. He was a lawyer in town, I believe. And it was a little single room that had been expanded on, and it was falling apart over the decades and rotting all around it. And my parents had been thinking it was a lost cause. There wasn't any salvaging it. And when my dad passed, we'd already kind of decided we were going to make a crack at it. So we got into hazmat suits and took the ceiling down, and about 1,500 pounds of mouse excrement and acorns and whatnot rained down on us and filled the floor with stuff. And we got it all out and took the walls out, and underneath all of the gross stuff was old-growth redwood, which it looked like the day it was born. It just sparkled like cinnamon or something. It was really magical to discover it under there. We took just some coconut oil, and we'd actually ran out of coconut oil because you oil the wood. You don't need to soap it, and you can just clean it with the oil. And we ran out of coconut oil, and we were like, well, maybe it's just some mineral oil. And we went into town, and this was when Rite Aid was still here, and the closest thing we could find was baby mineral oil, which smells like diapers. So the cabin smelled like diapers for a while, but clean diapers at least.
Oh, it comes already smelling like diapers.
It has a scent. It has a scent added to it.
Maybe they think new mothers think that's an attractive
Yeah, this
smell.
is the new baby smell. It's this chemical diaper thing. I don't know, but we just took cloths and oil and oiled the wood, and it came alive, and it was just magic, really, how beautiful that wood is after so long. And we didn't want to cover it back up again, so we ended up insulating the exterior of the cabin instead of the interior, so we could still see the redwood. And we we had a lot of really good help from a friend of ours who made these crazy dreams of ours come true. And now we live in a 360 square foot old growth redwood cabin with a giant monster coming out of the porch with his huge clawed hands are reaching around the porch and a huge sign that says, "Go away." And we have a moat surrounding the cabin of bowling balls. There's a moat of, I don't know, we're at about 80 or so bowling balls right now that goes around the cabin, and it helps with the drainage. We'll have, water will come off the roof and splash onto the bowling balls and sort of send it down a little bit. And they're beautiful and they look lovely in the rain. And I love bowling.
Okay. And Char, if you're listening, you think you have an unusual house. Well, you're not the only one. So where do you get all these bowling balls?
At Goodwill.
You what?
At Goodwill. We used to have a
bowling balls.
Sometimes, yeah. You never know what they're going to have at Goodwill. I try to go every day, and they put them in the sporting goods section. And, I'd say about once every 2 weeks we find another bowling ball.
And what's the going rate for a used bowling ball?
They're $4.99, so it's $5, and we've probably got 80 now. And sometimes we'll have donated something and gotten our 20% off coupon thing, so that'll.
Oh yeah, that helps. Yeah. So what's the going rate for a new bowling ball?
I have no idea. I don't buy anything new.
Oh, okay.
I try
but they probably don't sell well here because where's the closest bottom?
Well, Tsunami Lane's in Crescent City is the closest. We used to have one down over where Barron's Furnishings is.
Uh-huh.
And that was great. They had the best French fries in the world.
Bowling is supposed to be a sport that's kind of dying. They told me that in high school.
Yeah, but like all things that were dying, I think that there's now new interest in activities that are not your standard cell phone activities. I think people get more into it. If we had a bowling alley here, I think it would do really well.
Be a big investment to try, though.
They're incredibly expensive overhead-wise. It's just a mess. There's, the machines are constantly breaking. And
when I was a kid, they built a bowling alley not far from my house, and all of us were young teenagers looking for anything to do for work, and we said, "Oh boy, we can be pin boys," or whatever they call it, that set the pins up.
Yeah.
Little did we know that technology had advanced a little bit since pinballs, and they did pin boys, and the machines picked everything up. And
you've been automated out of your position.
That was one of my first disappointments in life as far as being automated out. I also learned when I was late in high school that the other career I had planned for myself could not be fulfilled. I wanted to fulfill a career of picking grapes.
Uh-huh.
And it turned out that they weren't hiring any white Americans to pick grapes, so I was kind of crushed there.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah. So what are some of the things you did on the? Oh, before I forget, you mentioned that you packed up the turtle. Did you really have a turtle? Or
his name is Glenn.
Oh.
He's an eastern stinkpot. It's a musk turtle. He's actually a fugitive of South Carolina. He was rescued by a well-meaning woman, I don't know her, as the size of a quarter, I'm told. And he'd gotten stuck under something to do with a swimming pool cover. And he was by himself, and the well-meaning woman took him in and then had him for a period of years, and then moved or something and gave it to my husband, Ben. And he's had Glenn now. I mean, we've had him together now for 5 years or so. And then he had Glenn before that about 10. I don't know. Glenn's a young, youthful 13 or so, I think. And he's about the size of a small person's fist.
That's about it, too.
He's
Won't
not
get
going to
much
get much
bigger
bigger.
than-
He'll live, turtle, God willing, he'll live for probably longer than us. But he really likes it here. He's, I think he
How
thinks
can you
the
tell he
water's
likes it
similar.
here?
Oh, he has
Does he
so
smile
much,
a lot, or-
Oh, he has so much fun. He likes to watch me braid my hair. He's in love with. He's got a little crush on me. So he usually disappears when other people come sit near him. But if I come sit near him, he'll come out. And if I start to braid my hair, he does this sort of dance ritual thing where they like flutter their arms back and forth. He'll go like
That is a sexual come on.
yeah. And no, seriously, that's one of their moves. And every time I sit down and look over, he's looking at me in some way. He'll be like positioned up. He does these sort of Tony Hawk moves where he'll get up onto a branch and he'll just be holding on. He's totally underwater. He's an aquatic turtle, and he comes up for air every once in a while, but he doesn't bask like a normal aquatic turtle would. They would come out and bask under a light.
Some don't. I don't think most turtles do bask at all.
Yeah, no, he just wants to swim around, and he looks ridiculous swimming, and he's so cute. He just motors around, and then he'll kind of float in. It's very much like a moon landing, where he's kind of, the what is it, the G and the ha, or the pitch and the roll, trying to get his little jets right, and then he'll kind of float down and then bonk. And if you put a little food pellet in, it'll float, and he'll go up to the top and grab it, and then you can hear it crunch. He'll just crunch it, and 90% of the food pellet will just explode out of his mouth and just make a giant mess. And then there's a plecostomus in there, butterscotch, and she'll come around and clean up after him. But then if you feed him one of the algae pellet or the algae wafers that the plecostomuses as algae eaters want, if you feed him one of those, he knows that she wants it too, so he'll take it in his mouth and he'll go and hide it from her. And he'll try to hide it under the rocks so that she can't get it, but she can, they can both smell it in the water, so it's not hard to find. He's not very smart, but he's really cute.
Well, that sounds very entertaining. Several years ago, when I moved here, we used to travel a lot, and it was hard for me to have exotic pets. And I've been a kind of an amateur herpetologist since I was about 3 years old.
Wow.
And I bought a great big tank, and I bought some dart frogs, poison dart frogs.
Ooh.
They're not poison, and in the trade they just call them dart frogs. That's a better PR name, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And I threw 3 of them in the tank, and I've been feeding them. And I don't know where along the lines I found out that they can live 20 years.
Wow, yeah.
So I have to find somebody to inherit those frogs, and I haven't found anybody yet that's going to want them. But
Yeah.
they may just be on their own.
I chose not to have children, but that's why I have nieces and nephews. So far, only nephews. But
I was going to say the turtle's a better choice.
They'll be getting the turtle is. I do not regret being the mother of an Eastern stink pot or a border collie, and I've got a couple of nephews, and one of them might take the turtle.
Well, that's good. You have a plan for
Not
that.
going to have a choice.
Yeah. The turtles are a much better pet than kids are. The turtle will never come home with some guy someday. And, hey, look, Mom, who I'm dating. And you go, who? So.
Yeah, they might make a mess, but they're not going to make you feel bad about all your life decisions.
Yes.
They're pretty all right with the choices you've made,
you don't,
the life that you've chosen for them.
You don't have to worry about saving for their education or anything like that. They get educated all by their own self. And if they screw up, if he's alone like that, who knows? Nobody cares.
And I think he likes being in a small town. And, it's kind of like the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in a way. So I think he feels at home.
I as soon as I bought the house, I put in a little pond. It's about an 8 by 10 pond, and I had planned on populating it with turtles, or a couple, maybe raise some turtles in there. And the local ones are illegal to own, and I was going to get sliders, the little green guys, and it turns out they are illegal to own here. And now the turtle that we used to buy for 15 cents and the 5 and 10 is $50. So I'm not going to do that.
We did check. He is not an illegal turtle to have here.
Yeah.
We got the card that has the pictures of the variety of turtles that you're not allowed to have here.
Yeah.
We're okay.
So, other than turtles, what have you been doing? What did you do on your odyssey outside?
Well, after I left here, I was born here in 1981, and skipping a lot of things. Graduated high school here in 1999, which was a really interesting time to be starting adulthood. And I wanted to get away as far as I could from my hometown, having been here, my whole life. And as far as I could kind of figure out at that time, that was Minnesota. So I went to a small private liberal arts college in Minnesota called Carleton. 1,800 students. It was a very small school, and I had only looked at a couple of other colleges, one of which was U of O, and it was so incomprehensibly big to me. I just didn't really understand it.
Coming from a little town that didn't work.
I'd spent time in big cities, and I felt comfortable, but it wasn't what I thought of as like a college experience. And I was, in some ways, really into school, and so I had this fantasy of a really bucolic leaves changing in the fall. We don't have seasons changing here so much. So I had this fantasy of being, somewhere out east where they have trees that turn in the seasons. And that was kind of one of my decisions, was I wanted like different weather and different seasonal patterns. So I chose Minnesota, where they did indeed have, beautiful oak trees and maple trees that would turn these crazy colors.
And snow up to your nose.
And
Why would you choose someplace that has horrible winter?
I've always been a big kind of runaway, and I have always gone in an extreme opposite direction from where I was before. So it's kind of the easiest way to sort of swing on a pendulum. You go way back one way, and then you've got a bigger swing the other way, and it gives you a lot of momentum. And so it's always been my MO to just kind of pack up, and it's always seemed, up until now, where I feel like I'm comfortably in like old age, where I don't want to do it anymore, and it hurts to do it anymore. But it was always the easiest thing in the world to just get into a car or an airplane and just go anywhere. And, it started with, probably started before college, but it started for real in college, where it was like, oh no, this is voluntary. Any place that I go to is, it's up to me. Nobody has like a list of places I need to go in my life. So, I was there for part of my sophomore year, and decided that wasn't the place for me anymore, and just like packed up and went straight to Hawaii, because that's the opposite of Minnesota in the wintertime, right?
I had a nephew a few years ago was looking for where he wanted to go to college, and he was looking at places in Pennsylvania and this and that. And I said, a few months ago, we were in San Diego, and the kids are sitting under palm trees in T-shirts and shorts studying.
I actually kind of prefer the cold. Now that I've done a variety of things, I really do prefer the cold. I'm bundled up right now, and it's 80 degrees outside. I like wintry climates, but it was time for me to go. So it was do the next move, and then I worked on an organic ginger farm in on the Big Island, and did that and hitchhiked around for a little while until I decided. I was trying to figure out what to do. I'd really disappointed all of my very academic extended family who'd, worked hard their whole lives to provide diplomas and education to, my family of very educated people. And so I didn't really know what I was doing, and I knew that there was quite a bit of what's the opposite of expectation, like the letdown after expectations are not met. And so it was like, okay, well, I need to figure something out. So I kind of did a sabbatical in Hawaii for a while, and walked around a lot, and encountered a couple dead bodies, and it was,
Dead bodies.
yeah, well, only like 1.5. I was working on that.
1.5.
Well, I was working on the ginger farm.
Which was worse, the 1 or the half?
Well, the half was scarier, actually, because I didn't actually see the body. It happened right before I got there. But the first one, I was working on the ginger farm, and we had the only phone that was on. It was a really long gravel road, and we had the only phone in the area. And we were just working, and all of a sudden this guy drives up in his little pickup, and he goes, "Help, help, so-and-so's choking. He's turned blue." And I had just before I went to Hawaii, I don't know why exactly, I had just taken and gotten certified for my CPR and
Whoa.
first aid class. So I was like, well, I just got certified. I can't not go help. I'm basically obligated to go help this person. But I'm terrified because, like, I just, what if I'm going to have to actually perform a procedure on somebody and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And so I get into the car, and very importantly, I say, "Take me to him." and so this guy...
I've had a 2-week course.
It wasn't a 2-week course. It was like 10 minutes. And so I get in the truck, and he drives for a little while and then says, "This is as far as I'm going," and stops. And he's like, he's up there in that tent. And I'm like, okay, but he won't drive all the way up there. Apparently, this guy who's in the tent had recently purchased the land and was building a house for himself, and had hired this guy with the little truck to be his like helper in construction. And so they had some kind of like a base, not a foundation, but some kind of frame going on. And then inside that frame, just on the dirt, was the tent that had the guy who was building a house for himself. And apparently the helper had showed up. So I don't know what happened, but he's freaked out now. We've called the ambulance, but he's not going up there any further. And so I have to get out and walk up the rest of the way. And it's just this tent, and I don't know what to expect. He said he was choking and blue. This doesn't seem like a choking situation. So I just go down and I open up the tent, and the zipper's just like, "Rrr." And I open it up, and there on the floor is just this beautiful old man. He kind of looked like you a little bit. He had long white hair and a white mustache, and he was very fit. He'd clearly been, working outside and building his house by himself, and he was wearing just some shorts and no shirt. And he had the body of, he was clearly very old, but he had the body of, a lot of people in Hawaii have bodies like these, where you can tell that they use their body all the time, and that they're out in the sun. Mm-hmm. And you kind of can't reconcile the age of the face and the long hair with this very youthful looking body that I don't know, it's just a very
youthful looking, but he was dead.
Yeah, but he was dead, but very peaceful looking. And I was really relieved because I didn't want there to be a lot of ambiguity. Like, do I need to give him CPR? Yeah. Can I save him? And I was sort of rescued from that responsibility by him being clearly dead. And I sort of reached out and kind of just touched a couple of my fingers to his stomach, and it, pushed the sort of blood away, and the blood didn't return. My fingers made an imprint there. And I took that to mean, they didn't mention that in the CPR class, but I took that to mean that I didn't need to start, trying to give him emergency life measures. So I just, stepped back out and waited for the ambulance. And they said that they figured he was probably dead about 11 hours.
Oh. That was choking quite a while ago.
It was quite a while ago. I don't know where the choking thing came from. That's just what he said.
Well, I guess he figured that would work. So did you have any other exciting experiences in Hawaii? Did you learn to scuba dive or surf or anything?
I just hitchhiked, was just, it's one of the only places where, a young... how many places can a female hitchhike anymore? It's just not really possible. And at that time, this is, 2000. This is 2000. At that time, it was still possible. And so there was a lot of freedom, and a lot of people got around by hitchhiking. So it was very common to have a perfectly acceptable person give you a ride. And then you might end up with somebody who's going to be reaching into the back seat every 5 minutes for a piece of paper that confirms the conspiracy theory that he's talking about. And he just wants to show you the proof.
Be very entertaining hitchhiking.
And
you probably considered buying a car after a couple of those.
I really, wouldn't have been able to afford a car, I don't think. But we had one other body. There was a very remote camp area that you had to hike into, and the day before we arrived, it was a 2-day hike. Apparently, someone had gone into the water and committed suicide in the water and sent everyone scattering, and so they were coming back up the trail from us and saying, "Don't go, man, it's bad energy down there."
Oh,
So that was an interesting
or
weekend.
no energy, maybe. So I see in your notes here that your next thing after Hawaii is Hollywood.
Yeah,
Did you
well,
go to
actually,
the-
I went to Seattle first, but that was kind of my stepping stone to Hollywood. I really had no idea what to do, and I'd had a lot of fun doing theater here in school. And I had a sort of connection with a casting director by way of one of the teachers here who we were just mentioning. And she knew a casting director up in Seattle. So she said, that's better. It's better to have a step somewhere than to, have no step anywhere rather than just going straight to Hollywood to be an
Oh, yeah.
actress. And so I said that makes sense. So I moved to Seattle and just started auditioning. I never had a car. I would just walk, and it would take forever to get places. And I would take the bus. And I was there over 9/11. I was shooting a commercial for the Washington State Lottery the day of 9/11. So I was up really, really early in the morning and was getting picked up to go to this shoot. And so, I was awake on the West Coast when this was going on at, 9:30 in the morning and on the East Coast. I forget when it was now. It was before 9, I think. It was early. And I stayed there and did fun stuff for probably 3 years, lived in like 3 different places, always by myself. I had this tiny, tiny little studio with a Murphy bed, and I cooked everything on a George Foreman grill. And I don't know, I was just young. I turned 21 and went to this cool gay bar for my 21st birthday. And it just wasn't my city. Which is weird because I'm from the Pacific Northwest, but I just never jived with Seattle as a city.
Oh, you were in Seattle.
I was in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
And so then 2003 or so, I was like, okay, maybe it's time to go into Hollywood. I'd gotten my union card with that commercial. Oh, and I was, somebody actually ended up profiting off of 9/11 because they canceled the commercial shoot because of 9/11. They still had to pay everybody, even though it had gotten canceled, but they refused to pay, saying that there was an act of God, and that was, why they couldn't pay. So they got fined for not paying, and they had to pay everybody double.
Oh.
And it got me into the union. So it is, pretty hard to get your SAG card. I think it's maybe a little easier now that they've joined up with the AFTRA union, but I don't actually know that that's true. But a lot of times it can take a long time to get your SAG card.
I just realized something as we're talking, and maybe Mike's...
He's gone. Oh, no, he's there.
I don't think you mentioned your name when we started. Who the hell are you anyway?
No. My name
There's
is Megan.
people out there saying, oh, yeah, well, she sounds like a neat person. I'd like to meet her.
My name is Megan Boye. My parents, longtime chiropractors in town, moved here, I think probably 1980 from Bend. And I have a younger brother, Dylan. And from here, I was born on the floor of the Great American Smokehouse Seafood Restaurant down the highway, which doesn't exist anymore. And lived up the Winchuck my whole life. And then had kind of interesting adventures.
I was driving down 101 not long ago and looking around. And you mentioned that restaurant that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
This town is full of places that don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of...
They're all available, and
yeah,
a lot of them have a lot of character.
Yeah.
There are places in town, and especially Harbor. Brookings is cool and all, but I think Harbor is really the salt of our earth here. I think my nature is more of a Harbor girl.
Yeah.
I'm a windchucker. That's my sort of base. But if I need to kind of pick my battles, I'm going south of the bridge.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, this is Mike here, just speaking up for myself. I just woke up. Have we been to Hollywood yet? And I've heard she does some art too. I don't know. What? Help me out here.
Somewhere in very tiny letters on her notes here, she has something about.
Did I write something about art?
Does say art, yeah.
Well, we
You go back to sleep now, Mike. We'll cover that.
we're going to Hollywood. We're going to Hollywood. I came back here for 6 months to save up for a car. And I went to Hollywood, and I spent 7 years in Los Angeles, and it was a lot of fun. And I did a couple TV shows. I did an episode of CSI Miami, which was really fun and weird. And I was murdered and thrown into a bog. And then the person who was tasked with disposing of my body was so overcome with disgust at my dead body that he threw up on my face. And so that was it was a butternut squash soup that they had him throw up on my face.
Oh, this was part of part of
this is the show. This is the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They booked me for the whole week, and I went into a bog, and this guy threw up on my face, and I was killed by the guy who played Donnie Darko's dad in Donnie Darko, the movie, Holmes Osborne. Nice guy. But he killed me. And
So after being thrown up on, you decided maybe Brookings wasn't so bad as that?
Yeah, it took me a long time to get back there, though. I did a few more Hollywood years and then decided that was kind of not where I was going to be forever. So I packed up my car and I drove to Kingston, New York, and I spent 3 years in New York State in a couple of post-industrial towns, Kingston and Poughkeepsie, just about a half an hour from each other on opposite sides of the river. Yeah.
A lot of people don't, when you hear New York, you think of Manhattan and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people don't realize there's a lot of wilderness up in upstate New York.
Yeah, it doesn't take that long to get kind of out into the sticks. It was a 2 hour. It was the most northernmost Metro North stop on the metro station, and it was about 2 hours from New York City. But you felt like you were in a wild place.
So I think our engineer today kind of rudely interrupted us by saying that you might have some art interest.
There was, kind of the reason I was like, oh, Curry Café, I think I might have something to contribute to that, was I had, come back here, and I was the featured artist of the month at Manly Art Center in February. And so I had a show there, and we talked about the types of art that I do, and I was like, maybe that would be something interesting to talk about in the future. I've always been a creator of art wherever I move to, and I started probably about 10 years ago focusing on taking things that are not what they appear to be and turning them into other things. So I'll take a photo of something and then turn it into something completely different using printing and then drawing on top of the image. So I'll take photos of imagery in sand or rocks or leaves or something like that, print onto work, and then work on top of it and transform it into new things.
Okay, you can. I
can't. What you wanted to hear, Mike? I'm not sure how to jump into the art.
I'm not. I don't know how to describe your art.
But you purchased one of my pieces.
I think it's all actually amazing, but I can't describe it. I bought one of your pictures, but I have no idea what it is, and it looks like a bird or doing something, and it has a title. I think maybe that explains.
Bird is the second most common thing that people see in there, and I had one lady who actually.
You mean that's an interpretation? See,
right, because I did. I have three versions of the one that you have, and I had a woman after the show look at it and say that she saw a man on a bed with like an elaborate bedspread, and like a bed frame, and she sort of mapped it all out for me, and I was blown away that I didn't see that. I see fish. I see sort of fish monument with a sheep's head, and you see bird.
Okay.
And that's what I don't know how any of it. That's what fascinates me. And
I'll go back and look for sheep.
Not that one, but a lot of them say are like pictures of an image that I see in a piece of marble, and then turn it into It's a person where the figure remains the same, but I change the background on him each time. So, it's the same figure going through 100 different, backgrounds. Collect all infinity, really, because as you're wandering through life and a traveler in life, you go through infinity different scenarios and backgrounds. So I can make them fairly fast and just change where this wanderer is going.
Okay. You've kind of tried to describe the process to me, and even pointing things out with your fingers, it's not, I couldn't understand exactly how you make these things. Maybe you could
I
tell everybody here without giving away any trade secrets, where tomorrow there'll be 35 of them in every art.
Hopefully. I start out with a really heavy watercolor paper, just really thick, really heavy watercolor paper. And then I start with a just standard Bic pen. You actually have a wonderful selection of Bic pens in this room. I would work
So
with
we should keep an eye on them, is it?
I would work with about
They're
half
counted,
of
by the
these
way.
pens.
I see you eyeing them. We
There are ones that I don't like. If they've got too slick of a roller, like this one here, the blue one, that has too slick of a roller and it's just going to slide all over the place. This one might actually be my favorite. It's a clicker and it's got kind of a wide point on it. It's maybe a little slicker than I'd like, but it's pretty good. So I'll take just a black Bic pen and then I'll emboss the paper with it. So I'm going to start out with just like a swoopy shape with my hand. And I'm just going to go lightly and quickly making some like round and maybe a pointy shape. And maybe I'll go like that. And then I'll spend about 10 hours or so going over that line in a heavy, deep way so that it digs a very fine but deep kind of ditch into the watercolor paper. And you go over it and over it and over it until you emboss the paper and you can feel where that makes a really big divot. And because you've got the really heavy watercolor paper, you've got a lot of cushion to work with. So you can go at it really intensely and it doesn't damage the paper. So I go over those lines until I've got a very thick, deep black line around my
these are all
drawing.
the swirly lines.
This is the swirly lines. So I'm just taking a light swirly shape and I'm turning it into a very dark black heavy line. And then I've sort of got separate zones then. So I can go with layers of colored pencil and do one texture or color combination on one side of this black line. And if I accidentally kind of go into that line a little bit, it's not going to mark it because you're going to skip over that embossing. So your pencil doesn't go outside of the line. It kind of creates this barrier.
It kind of looks like at this point you really can't make a mistake because you just kind of
make a mistake, because if you end up with like a straight, like say I'm going over really intensely there and I go out of my line there, then I need to incorporate that stray line somewhere. It's not that I've made a mistake. It's just that now there's that other line there and it just goes in
as opposed to being a mistake.
As opposed to being a mistake. And, always starting with pen, that's kind of been my thing, is that there aren't mistakes and there's no taking it back. So you're completely free and also sort of confined in a nice way. So I'll go through and I'll make those lines all very dark until I've got a line drawing of black and white and very hard lines. Then I go with colored pencil, and it's a soft core colored pencil, so the pigments are somewhat soft and you can do a lot of layering to create a lot of different colors. So you can do undercolors, layer a bunch more, and then use a softer pigment like the white to actually go back down in and bring in that undercolor to the surface again. If you work enough of the colored pencil pigment onto the paper, it becomes kind of malleable. You're using friction and you're rubbing the pigment together, and so it kind of creates like a little paste. The harder the pigment, so each color is going to have a different kind of hardness to it. So the Tuscan red and the indigo blue are both very hard colors. The white is a very soft pigment because it I don't know, the oils or something in it. I don't know why, but it's almost like chalky and crumbly and pasty. So that's why it makes a very good blender. And you just put so much colored pencil onto the paper that it doesn't look like colored pencil anymore, and it kind of takes on a sort of waxy, leathery kind of feeling. And then about 100 hours later, you've got an interesting drawing that doesn't look like colored pencil.
100 hours of work, or you put it aside in 100 hours?
100 hours of work, usually with the colored pencil ones. It takes a long time, and it causes a lot of sort of joint issues. And I'll work on what I call the mother pieces. Those are the really time-intensive colored pencil pieces. And then I'll take those and make reproductions of them. I'll go down to Pacific Rim, and they've got a special paper for me. It's their semi-glossy cardstock. And I'll make like 4 or 5 prints of that finished drawing. And then I'll take those cardstock prints and work over top of them in ink or paint, or usually ink I'm doing on top of the cardstock, and then glue it onto an interesting frame with an interesting background that I find at Goodwill or the Humane Society thrift store. And then I'll turn that one mother piece that takes 100 hours to do into infinite numbers of variations of that kind of original drawing.
Okay, I don't know how. I'm trying. I see. I know what you're talking about. I know what the finished thing looks like, but I don't know if anybody listening to you describing that you sound like a kindergarten doing
It is
doodles.
my curse. It's my curse, actually. All of the art forms that I've ever done in my life sound like something that a small child is doing, and probably not doing very well.
What was that book? Everything I know I learned in kindergarten.
Yeah, no, I get it. It doesn't sound that interesting.
Well, you didn't let me finish. I wasn't going to leave it at that it looks like a 6-year-old's doodle. But anyway, there are other applications that you'll go into that just turn out to be amazing colors, amazing figures, and I didn't realize that people saw that many things in some of the things that I don't.
Yeah, and that's been kind of the surprising thing for me too, is that, when I see the imagery that I see in my head, and it makes perfect sense to me. I don't ever not see that image there, and then somebody else will look at it and see something totally different. And I don't really know how to describe that effect, because I don't think I'm doing necessarily abstract work, but I'm also not doing representational work. But however you describe it, it looks like something that it's not.
So how are you distributing these, or where are you showing them?
I shuttle them around in my car, so all of my art is.
But do you sell them out of your car?
I can. I was thinking I'd join the classic car show at the Cruisers this year. I can sell them out of the back of my car. What is it, $25?
I don't know what it costs.
To put a car into the Cruisers show, and then I can sell them out of the back of my car.
Do you have a car that's appropriate, or?
I mean, it's an '05. It's classic.
Oh, what?
It's an '05. It's more than 20 years old.
'05 what?
It's a CRV. It's a Honda CRV. The last year that they put card tables in the back Do you know about that?
Card tables?
Card tables.
No.
Yeah. So the CRV has their spare tire on the rear door. And so where the spare tire would normally go, back in the back, they've got a card table that you can take out and set up. It's even got a hole in the center of it, so if you want to put up like an umbrella.
So you have a home on wheels. You could have used that while you were traveling around, or did you?
It's a great car, and I can sell my art on it. But
I wonder what the car show would think of that.
They probably wouldn't like it, but
I've seen cars for sale there. But
I know a few people in the Cruisers. They might let me do it. I've got some ins. I have work up at the Manly Arts Center every month. I've been having a lot of fun getting involved in various activities in Brookings.
That Manly Arts Center is a nice place.
My folks actually bought the property that they live on from her sister. Sorry, from Virginia Manley and her sister up the Winchuck. and I sell them out of the back of my car. Sold another one yesterday. I keep them at my mom's office. They're just kind of hiding and
Oh, so she has
her
display
office.
place? It's just display room?
nobody ever sees them. But
Oh.
I have art in all of the
Well,
rooms.
we just
up at my mom's
spent
office.
several hours putting them in another place. Nobody will ever see them.
Yep. Now we have them here. I have 7 or 8 of sort of migration series, and then I've got another series of volcanoes. I've been doing volcanoes where I would take pictures of poplar leaves, and then the way they disintegrate out through their stems, it looked like a volcano to me. So I take pictures of them, and then
They probably look like a bird to me, though.
do you see birds?
No, I mean,
Yeah,
maybe. Or turtles. I'd be more likely to see turtles.
turtles and birds.
We have a bunch of them here in the studio. We put up about 10 today. And we're here on Wednesdays from 2 to 4, open to the public if you want to come in and look at some of them. Or if you can get here in the next 15 minutes,
We'll give you a little tour.
if you're listening to this show on Sunday afternoon, or if you're not on Sunday afternoon, then you're listening to a replay. So don't think we're going to be here just because I said we'd be here now. Because we're here now, but we may not be here then.
And I like to come on Wednesdays for the volunteer days. And I think if anybody wants to come and see the work, it's always nice to talk about the process and the stories.
Yeah, every Wednesday, by the way, on KCRW, we're open from 2 to 4. And you can come in and do what we call a soapbox. You can do a 2-minute recording of just about anything you want to talk about. Of course, it has to meet community standards. There's no advertising, no defaming or anything like that. But and you can come in, meet everybody, and visit the studio.
We've been talking about stuff for the Pirate Festival. I think it would be fun to do a kind of continuous piece that you could do live while people walk around in the Pirate Festival.
It would be something very interesting to watch and find out about. So what else have you done in your life besides this? I'm looking at your notes here, and I see, okay, you already talked about New York, and what's that under New York?
That's NC. I went down to Western North Carolina from New York, and in the mountains, lots of waterfalls. I think it's 144 waterfalls in the county,
Wow,
Transylvania County.
that's an artist's dream, isn't it?
And it is. It is a wild and wonderful place. I was there for about 6-7 years. And between that, went up to Michigan and cared for my grandmother in the last year of her life on the shores of western Michigan, Lake Michigan. And then I went back down to North Carolina, learned the wonderful art of cooking hybrid North Carolina, Kansas City style and Texas style barbecue. So I would cook about 600 pounds of brisket and pulled pork and ribs.
Were you able to meet Texas standards on that?
What are Texas standards?
Well,
Like brisket?
Texas is one of the places where people take a barbecue very seriously.
seriously.
Yeah.
Very seriously. We did our hybrid, and we could show up the locals in Texas and Kansas City.
That's about the only restaurant we don't have here, I think.
Barbecue?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple barbecue places.
Are there?
Well, there have been over time.
Yeah, over time there's been a couple. Yeah.
And back, here we do more like what they would call out there cookouts or grilling.
Yeah.
We don't call it barbecue here. It's more about grilling than smoking. Sorry, I'm laughing at Mike, just trying to show you a note.
You're laughing at what?
I'm laughing at Mike trying to show you a note.
Your turn to show me a note.
Mike trying to show you a note.
Okay.
Me. She just had a great showing at Manly Arts Center this past
had so
month
much
where
fun. I had so much
she
fun.
has incredible stories from that. Sorry to bounce in, guys.
That's okay.
I'm out.
So
It
tell
was
us
a lot
about
of
the
fun.
Manly
It was
Arts.
a lot of fun. I got to choose my month, and I think I chose wisely because we're closed in January, so I had the whole month to just kind of get ready for it. And I had asked if there was like an average number of pieces that people brought, and was told that it's totally open to whatever. And so I ended up bringing 56, which was apparently a lot more than
yeah.
they were expecting. They said the average is actually more like 12 or 15.
Yeah, that's like the whole center there.
Yeah, it was a lot, and we didn't go floor to ceiling, but we went fairly low and we went pretty high. And it was about 12 years or so of work, kind of all together, with maybe half of it having been done in the last year while I was here. And it was really wonderful to be able to sit and do the interview because on the second Saturday art walk, they interview the artist of the month. And so to be able to, share the stories and have people ask questions about process and how things are done.
But you're not able to do any of your process there?
Like create it there?
Yeah, be doing some of the artwork there at the...
Yeah, I do stuff there at the Manly every week. I go for the painting day. I go for open studio. So people know that they have classes there, but Manly also...
And maybe other people don't know. Could you talk a little bit about what kind of classes they have? I know they had a pottery class at one time.
They have ongoing pottery classes. They have workshops throughout the year. There'll be like needle felting, assemblage jewelry. I'm actually going to do a workshop in October where we'll do one of these like line drawings, do some basic color blocking, and then I'll go make copies of everybody's work, and then we'll cut them all up and rearrange them in a different thing, and I'll bring in custom frames from Goodwill, and we'll basically make a reassemblage of things combined. And the idea being that sort of nothing is precious and there are no mistakes. Like you make something, you can have that, but then you can also turn that into a number of different things. And that'll be fun. That'll be in October.
Your work doesn't really look like that. Like you said, there are no mistakes. I don't see anything that looks like you could have considered it a mistake. You almost make it sound like kind of a hodgepodge, but it's not. It all makes sense.
Right. I mean, I think that there's a certain freedom, and then you also, the discipline of spending long periods of time doing it. You get so that it can happen kind of quickly and naturally. And I think that when there are no rules, there are just infinite possibilities.
Yeah, there are definitely no rules to your stuff. You can see that. But there is order to it, and it's not just paint thrown on a piece of paper. It's you just have to see it. I can't describe it. And obviously I can't describe it well because I thought it was a bird in my picture. She says it's a sheep. But
It's a sheep bird.
I go home, I'll look for the sheep.
I do believe that it all has an intention. It's not something that I'm doing willy-nilly.
When you start a piece, do you know what it's going to look like, or is it moves along?
If I'm working from a photograph, then turning it into something that I see in that photograph, then I have a general idea of what that image is. But if I'm working from just the pen onto the paper, I don't know, and I'll make those first shapes, and I kind of will go, oh, that sort of looks like this to me. And I'll kind of work with that notion, and I'll work kind of slowly until I think that it doesn't look like that anymore and it looks like something else. And then I'll kind of follow that until that takes me somewhere else. And then I'll sort of get to a point where I need to decide because it'll naturally go too far in one direction to turn it into something totally different very easily. So I'll kind of commit to, okay, I see birds, coming off of here. I see under the ground here. I see an exploding volcano here. And so at some point, it'll become clear what it is. And I'll try not to mess it up. And
I used to watch that program that everybody did. I can't remember his name. The guy on PBS that did paintings.
Yeah, Bob Ross.
Yeah, and I would sit and watch him, and he has this beautiful painting. I said, wow, that's good. Then he takes a brush and he runs the brush all over the. I said, no, you just ruined it. And then by the time he's done with that second application,
Yeah.
it looks good again.
My mom, when she'll see a lot of these different stages of my pieces, she'll be one of the other people that, sees. And she and my husband will see them in different stages. And she'll think that it looks really great the way it is. And then the next time she sees it, it looks completely different. And it'll be like I've kind of killed the thing that, now the thing that she saw isn't there anymore. And it'll kind of, it's sort of distressing. But they typically go through a lot of extreme transformations, including maybe turning it upside down and, making something.
Yeah, some of those, I guess it's buyer's choice which side is up, huh?
Yeah, I'd like to have them be able to kind of go any way. Maybe there's a way that kind of generally makes more sense to me. But I think that a lot of them could be hung so that you could, put wire around all four sides or something so they could, change it up. You could rotate it every month or something.
Don't you hate it when people come up and say, why don't you do this, why don't you do that?
I'm usually just by myself. So.
If somebody comes in mid, your mother or somebody says, oh, that's lovely, but what about over here?
Yeah. And that's their own journey in the piece, too.
Yeah, I would hand them a brush or hand them a piece of paper.
With the colored pencil, it takes so long to do it. You can't, with paint, you can paint over something really fast.
Yeah.
You're slowed down a lot more with the colored pencil.
Well, so where are some of the other places we can find your work besides Manly?
My mother's office and
your mother's office?
Offices of KCIW. It's a really nice conference room. I think it's nice to see the additional walls with art in them.
Yeah,
Linda Evans is
you've absolutely dressed up our. I don't know what we call that room. It's the conference room or something, but
it looks like a conference room. It has a conference table and a big screen.
You have just named it then.
It's the conference room.
Yeah, I've been calling it the green room, even though it's nothing even close to that. But
and we're in the green room. I mean, this is green and blue.
Color-wise, this is the green and blue room. But don't talk. This was very controversial, believe it or not, hanging these curtains up.
Color is controversial.
Caused a problem. Anyway, so we're down to about 2 minutes here, a little more than 2 minutes. Anything else you want to say about your artwork? Or are you ever sorry that you left your Hollywood experience and maybe today you'd be doing something with Meryl Streep? Or
I think that it all happened how it should have happened. I've really enjoyed being kind of a tourist in different areas of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to kind of peek in the sort of behind the curtain and into the curtain. And then it felt good to move off and do different stuff.
So you see television shows sometimes about wannabe actors. And in L.A., as you know, everybody's an actor. Cab driver, a waiter, everybody is an actor. And you see these people like they're all living in small apartments. And it's a dream when they get an option to they don't call it tryout, but to be on a commercial or something like that.
Right.
And every time I see a commercial with some silly thing, I'm thinking that person is living the early part of what they hope is going to be their dream.
They had so much fun filming that commercial.
Yeah. It's fun if you don't have to depend on them for the money, I guess. I mean, doing them regularly.
Yeah, it was really cool being in a town where everyone is working in a creative kind of way.
It looks to me like just about doing anything in the movie industry would be somewhat romantic or exotic.
Yeah.
As you know, if you try to drive around L.A., you actually sometimes have a hard time getting someplace because there's a movie
That's
shoot.
why you got to walk. Everybody's got beautiful backyards. Everybody has interesting trees.
Yeah.
If I could get there in 5 hours, I'd walk.
Okay, well, we got the signal here that we are down to the last minute. And there is, we're beyond the last minute. There's the bump of music. Thank you very much, Megan, for coming in today and telling us about your artwork. And if you want to see some of our work here, we're here on Wednesdays from 2 to 4. Drop in and have a look.
Thank you. It was really a nice time being here today.
Well, it's been very nice having you.